Hey guys, Zaman
and Christina
from
from
Our
Our
Rich
Rich
Journey.
Journey. In today's video, we are going to be talking about taxes, and we're going to be talking about the taxes you're going to have to be paying in retirement. And we break them up into all different forms of income that you could be taking in. So we're going to be talking about taxes on your pension, on your Social Security, on your different tax advantaged accounts, and how you're going to be taxed differently in your traditional brokerage accounts. But not only that, we are also going to be talking about tips for reducing taxes in retirement. Because if you do some of these different tips, you can actually end up paying zero taxes in retirement. So that's what we want to talk about today. We get so many questions about taxes, so in this video, it's all about taxes.
But before we get into our conversation about taxes, do us a huge favor and subscribe to our channel and make sure you hit that notification bell. If you are new to this channel, Christina and I achieved financial independence and we retired early before the age of 40. And we have been sharing our journey on this channel for the past 3 years. And we share different ways to make, save, and invest money, all with the goal of achieving financial independence and retiring early if you choose to. And so in this video, our conversation about taxes is well related to our journey. You see, taxes can actually be one of the biggest fees that you pay when you are investing. And if you can find a way to minimize or avoid your taxes, it means you have more money to grow within your investment accounts. And it also means that you have more money to live off once you achieve financial independence and retire early, or if you just retire in the traditional sense.
So let's get into the discussion on taxes. Now, just to be clear, our discussion is going to be focused on the taxes you're going to have to pay in retirement. So one of the things you want to think about are all of the different income sources you're going to have in retirement, and you want to understand how those different sources are going to be taxed. So first, let's talk about your tax advantaged retirement accounts. When you are living in retirement, how are those different tax advantaged retirement accounts going to be taxed? Okay, so for the tax advantaged accounts, we're gonna be focused on the 401k, the 403b, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, and HSA accounts. So let's start off with the 401k, 403b, and the traditional IRA. All of these accounts are tax deferred accounts. Because of this, once you reach retirement and you start pulling that money out, at that point that you pull your money out, you're taxed on that money. And you're gonna be taxed at the ordinary income tax rate.
But now let's talk about our favorite retirement account, the Roth IRA. And it is our favorite because when you contribute to a Roth IRA, you are contributing after-tax dollars. But the money that you contribute can grow in the Roth IRA tax-free. So that money can grow to astronomical amounts. And no matter how big it gets, you will not have to pay taxes on that money. This is a huge benefit when you go to withdraw that money because it means you get to withdraw money from a Roth IRA tax-free.
But of course, there are a couple caveats on withdrawing this money tax-free. The first is that you have to be over 59 and a half years old, and then you also have to have your money in your Roth IRA for at least 5 years. If you satisfy both of those conditions, then you can pull out all of that money in your Roth IRA completely tax-free.
Now that is an amazing thing, especially if you're able to build up a great deal of wealth in a Roth IRA. It means you could be living the tax-free life in luxury if you do things right. Christina and I have built up our Roth IRAs to very large amounts, and we are so excited about our ability to pull from these accounts and that money be tax-free.
And the next account is the HSA.
Now wait, people don't even think of the HSA as a retirement account, so we must throw in that caveat.
It is definitely a retirement account. If you guys are not familiar with the HSA, the health savings account, we'll leave a link for a video that we made specifically on HSAs, and you can check that out. But basically what an HSA does in terms of the tax benefits is the money that you contribute to this account reduces your taxable income. And as your money grows within this account, it is growing tax-free. And another incredible tax benefit with an HSA is when you pull that money out at any time for a qualified medical expense, you can pull that money out tax-free as well. So you get to pull money out of an HSA tax-free if you're using it for a qualified medical expense. But one of the very cool things about an HSA is that once you reach 65 years old, you can pull any amount of money from your HSA for any purpose. It does not have to be for a qualified medical expense. And when you do that, when you pull that money out for any type of expense that's not a qualified medical expense, at 65 or older, you're going to be taxed as you would be taxed on a traditional IRA. So the HSA is somewhat of a hybrid, really. When you are retired and you are living off of money in your HSA, it has been growing tax-free if you use it for a qualified medical expense. But if you use it at 65 or older for a non-qualified expense, that money is really tax deferred, because once you pull it out after 65, if it's for a non-qualified expense, you are going to be paying taxes on that withdrawal. So those are taxes for your tax advantage accounts. But if you are pursuing FIRE, you most likely have a lot of money in a traditional brokerage account also. So you want to know how that money is going to be taxed. When you're looking at the money in your traditional brokerage accounts, you have to think about how you're generating income. And it's typically in three different ways: from capital gains, from interest, and from dividends.
So picture this for a moment. You are retired and you have this traditional brokerage account at Fidelity, Vanguard, whatever the case may be. That traditional brokerage account is generating these three types of income. And you can pull any of that income however you see fit. So if you want to live off of the dividends or the interest or the capital gains, it's completely up to you. But all of those different sources of income are going to be taxed differently. So you have to be careful which source of money that you pull from a traditional brokerage account.
Okay, so let's assume that you are living off of your dividends in retirement. So if you are living off of dividends, you have two different ways that you can be taxed, and that depends on what type of dividend you're collecting. So you can be collecting qualified dividends or non-qualified/ordinary dividends. Now, the difference between these two types of dividends are based off of IRS requirements, but typically most companies pay out qualified dividends. So if you are collecting qualified dividends, you're going to be taxed at the long-term capital gains tax rate. Now that is typically a lot lower than if you are collecting non-qualified dividends. If you're getting paid non-qualified dividends, then you're being taxed on that money as an ordinary income tax rate.
So generally, when you are living off of qualified dividend income from your investment portfolio, you are being taxed at a lower rate. This is a huge benefit when you are in retirement.
So that's dividends. Now let's talk about generating interest. You have interest that you're generating in your traditional brokerage account, and that is going to be taxed. And that's actually going to be taxed at the ordinary income tax rate. But what's really unique is you can be taxed off of things like bonds or CDs, interest that you generate from that. But again, let's assume you have bonds in your account. Your bonds, even though they're taxed at the ordinary income tax rate, they can be taxed differently at the federal and the state level. So that's something to be really aware of.
And we'll give you an example of what we mean. Let's say you have interest from federal treasury bonds. You are going to be taxed at the federal tax rate, but you won't be taxed at the state or local level. Now, let's say you have municipal bonds in your normal brokerage account and you're getting interest from those bonds. You won't be taxed at the federal rate on those bonds, but you will be taxed at the municipal or local level on those types of bonds. And now let's talk about the last type of income that you can get from your traditional brokerage account. And it is capital gains, the good old buy low, sell high for a profit type of money. You see, when you have an investment portfolio and your investment portfolio appreciates in value, the shares that you sell for a profit are considered capital gains. Now, depending on how long you have held those investments, that capital gains, that income is going to be taxed differently.
So let's say you have an investment in your traditional brokerage account and you sell it and you generate a profit from that, but you sell it at the point where you've held it for 1 year or less. So you have capital gains. When you hold it for 1 year or less, you sell it and you get a profit, you're going to be taxed on that profit based off of the ordinary income tax rate. Now, let's assume that you actually have investments that you hold for longer than 1 year, but you're still selling them and getting a profit from them. That is still capital gains, but instead, because you've held it for longer than 1 year, you're going to be taxed at the long-term capital gains tax rate. And typically, that is going to be lower than if you are taxed at the ordinary income rate. So that is the focus for taxes when you have traditional brokerage accounts and when you have tax advantaged accounts. Now, we briefly also want to talk about when you're collecting Social Security and when you're collecting a pension, if those things apply to you. So let's start with Social Security. So with Social Security, it really depends on all of your sources of income, but you can be taxed anywhere from 0 to 85% of your Social Security benefits. Now, let's consider you filing as an individual. If you have more than $34,000 of income, then up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can be taxed.
Now let's talk about pensions. Now, pensions are taxed differently depending on how you contributed money to that pension. If you contributed to your pension with pre-tax dollars, that means when you go to pull that money out, you will be taxed on that income at the ordinary income tax rate. So this is something that you should understand when you are contributing to a pension.
Okay, so now that you have an understanding of how your different income sources in retirement are going to be taxed, let's talk about tips that we have for reducing your taxes in retirement, and we have 4 different tips. So our first tip is to really understand the tax bracket that you fall in. If you are not aware of this, then you're not able to take the right steps to keep yourself in a specific tax bracket. Now, just so you know, the US system is based off of a marginal tax system. So once you reach over into a next tax bracket, that doesn't mean that all of your income is going to be taxed at that higher rate. It's always marginal, but it's always good to really have a clear understanding of what those tax brackets are so that you can really run the numbers and understand how you're drawing from different income sources to keep you within a certain tax bracket. Okay, so assuming you are very clear about the tax bracket that you fall in, the next tip that we have for reducing your taxes is to strategically pull from your different accounts in order to keep you in those lower tax brackets. And I'll give you an example. If you are pulling, for example, from a Roth IRA, when you're pulling that money out, you're not being taxed on that money. That is a huge advantage if you're combining pulling money from a Roth IRA and from a traditional IRA and from some other form of account, like a traditional brokerage account. As you start pulling from your different sources, if you're understanding how that money is going to be taxed, along with your awareness of the tax bracket that you want to stay in, you can strategically pull from different accounts to keep you in those lower tax brackets.
Now, this is actually a really good example of the power, the tax benefits of the Roth IRA. Because if you are taking a qualified distribution from your Roth IRA, that income does not count against your taxable income, and thereby it won't count against you when it comes to pushing you into a higher tax bracket.
The next tip that we have is to strategically sell off your investments. And we alluded to this earlier in this video when we were talking about capital gains. Now, when you hold investments for longer than a year, you're going to be taxed at that long-term capital gains tax rate. And that, again, is typically lower than the tax rate that you would fall under if you held an investment and got capital gains off of investment that you held for 1 year or less. So focusing on those investments that you've had for longer that are generating a profit, that is a great way to reduce your taxable income. Another technique you can use is called tax loss harvesting. Now, if you've never heard of this technique, it's a combination of selling stocks at a loss to really offset the gains that you've got from selling stocks at a gain. So when you do this, you're actually just paying taxes off of the total profits. So you've got the total profits from your capital gains that you've realized minus those losses. And when you combine your gains and your losses, that typically reduces the amount of taxes that you owe.
Our last tip is to retire to a state that has a lower income tax rate or doesn't even have an income tax. In fact, there are 8 states in the US that have no income tax. This is a great way to reduce the amount of taxes that you pay in retirement. Now, you'll still have to pay federal tax on that money, but avoiding state income tax can really benefit a lot of people in retirement. Now, we hope that you have enjoyed this video, and we hope that we've given you enough information so that you can put together your own strategy for living off of your retirement accounts, your traditional brokerage accounts, or your pensions in retirement. And so if you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and join the journey.